What episode? This will be episode 4. I don't have an intro, so we're just gonna hop right into it.
Right.
I got Charles Laird,
Right.
with 4 Houses Realty. How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you, Phil?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So, how was the drive over here?
Drive was cool. It was pretty easy. I had some banking stuff to take care of, so took care of that and swung on over from Bloomfield here.
Cool, cool. I think I want to move this a little bit closer to you, actually.
All right.
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
So, you are unlike the other people I've interviewed so far
Okay.
because you own the brokerage.
Yeah.
You're like the figurehead, the man that makes it all happen.
Yeah.
So, how long kind of were you in real estate previous to owning the brokerage, to owning 4 houses?
Yeah, well, let me say this before I get too deep into it.
Okay.
I'm honored to be here, so I just want to say thank you for inviting me to share this with you guys. When Brianna told me, I was just like, because I saw the videos with you and her doing like first-time home buyer stuff, and that was really cool. So, so I'm honored to be here. I actually got licensed in 2004. So I was working with Coldwell Banker in Ann Arbor when I first got in. And the main reason why I got in was nothing that, it's nothing like super deep.
Okay.
I was looking to make money. That was it. I was working with a company called Bath Fitter, and we would sell these acrylic bathtub liners that would fit into your existing tub and wall, so you didn't have to tear out your bathtub. Your bathtub got all messed up. You just buy one of these acrylic liners and put it in, and you're good. And we were at a point where you can only run so many appointments a day.
Right.
So you can only make so much money. And I got to the point where it was like, I had pretty much maxed out. There's no more money to be made. And I've always been a relationship type of a guy. So we had 2 type of salespeople in this particular office. We had one guy who was just a hard closer. Like, he's not leaving the house until he walks away with a check. I never resonated with that style of sales because don't try to sell me like that, right? So you come into my house, I'm going to, I need to think about this $3,000 that you're asking me to spend. And so that's what I brought to Bath Fitter at the time, And so him and we always jockeyed back and forth between the number 1 sales guy in the state. I would be number 2, he would be number 1. I'd have more people say, hey, let's think about it, but they would call me back. So I had more callbacks than he did, but he had more first-time appointment closes than I did. So, but at the end of the day, it was only so many appointments you could run, only so much money you could make. And I remember meeting, I want to say this must have been 2002. A friend of mine came over with her partner, and her partner Lee, and he's like, man, you should get into real estate. You'd be really good at it. And at the time, Lee was driving a drop-top Benz.
Okay.
And I was driving a Dodge Intrepid. And in my mind, real estate people were like salespeople, like car salesmen, and I'm just like, no, I want to do something with a little bit more integrity. Sorry, I didn't say that. That was my inside voice, right? And then so some more time went by. I got more burned out at Bath Fitter, and I saw Lee again. This time Lee was driving an Escalade, and I was driving a Dodge Intrepid. Same Dodge Intrepid. And Lee said, you know what, man, you should really get into real estate. And at that point, I was convinced. I went to real estate school at Holloway's Institute in Ann Arbor, and that's pretty much where it took off. So I started with Coldwell Banker in 2004, Coldwell Banker Schweitzer in Ann Arbor, and it was good. It was fun. I remember my first deal was a house in Ypsilanti, an old depot town, and it was about $125,000, and I could not wait to close. It was so exciting, man. It was like my first closing, and I was the guy that got to the office. I would drive from Farmington Hills to Ann Arbor every single morning at like 7 in the morning. I'd be the first one there. I'd open it up. I'd make coffee for everybody. I'd get on the phone. And so to have this first closing getting ready to happen was like, it's like I deserve this, right? This is good. It's about time. And I got my check, and it was about $415.
Really?
And I'm like, what is this? And they're like, oh, well, you have to pay this fee. You have to pay this fee. You got to pay the broker fee. You got to pay a franchise fee. You got to pay insurance. I'm like, geez, man, like I can't live on this. And and back then, Lee was an avid reader, and I believe Lee probably still is, and so am I. So we were studying a book on assignments and different ways to put together contracts for investors. And so we did our first assignment, and it was a deal we did in Inkster. It was a 2-family flat, and it was being sold for $105,000. And we put together an assignment, and we ended up getting the seller to accept 90, and we sold it for 105. Actually, we sold it for 106, and we ended up splitting $16,000, the two of us, and now it's like, okay, this is good, So right. I got $8,000, and Lee got $8,000, and from that point forward, man, it's like, okay, I'm in, So that's pretty much where it started.
Right. You're here now. So yeah. I was gonna say, kind of how long that first deal? Like, how long did it take when you got your license?
Well, it didn't take long, man, because I got once I had that deal under my belt. I was doing a it was all about prospecting. There's a real estate coach called, you might have heard, Tom Ferry. Okay. Well, his father, Mike Ferry, was big back then, and so everything was about spending time prospecting. Going to first time home buyer seminars, that kind of thing. So I ended up at this first time home buyer seminar at Wayne State. My plan was to get them on the way out, right? So they go into this first time. So I was going to work the parking lot, right? And I ended up saying, I was curious. I said, well, let me go in here and meet the guy that's actually throwing the seminar. His name was Delbert Sauter, and I went in there and I met with Delbert, and him and I really hit it off. We really hit it off. So I said, hey man, I need to have you meet with Lee, and I don't know, maybe something will happen there. The two of them met, and they hit it off. And so Lee and Delbert ended up starting another company in Southfield. And so Lee left Coldwell Banker. I left Coldwell Banker, went with Lee, and we started this company in Southfield, and we did really, really well. At the time, I was doing mortgages as well.
Okay.
So back then it was a different vibe. So loan officers didn't need to be licensed. So it was wild. So, and then you had 80-20 loans, and it was just a wild time. And so, I had investors that were selling property, and I had people that were looking to buy property, and man, it was crazy. I had met this married lady. I'll never forget it, man. She was beautiful. Met this married lady, and at the time, I was so focused on, I'm not like, don't come at me sideways. Like, this is about business, right?
Right.
Only about business. And we met, and she said, well, listen, this is what I'm looking to do. I am looking to get my own independence from my husband. I want my own money. I want my own hustle. And I'm looking to do it in real estate. So I said, well, cool. So we put together a program for her. She ended up buying some investment properties. And, birds of a feather flock together. So she had friends that were also married, good jobs, good credit scores. They were looking to duplicate the same thing she was doing.
Okay.
So before you know it, man, I had these married women showing up at the office, man, and all of them were looking for the exact same thing. They were looking to have some financial independence through real estate. And, man, we were able to help a lot of people. It was a lot of work because I was handling, there were many days I was on the buy side, the sell side, and the mortgage. So I had, like, all these different sides of these transactions. Sometimes the listings were my listings. So you had another side, so before you know it, I've got all of these sides. And as they say, the juice wasn't necessarily worth the squeeze because we're talking about $50,000, $75,000 houses. And you're talking about doing the paperwork as a loan officer, and they're 80-20 loans or 95-5 loans. So it's like twice the paperwork. It was just so, and I would say I did that from 2005 till probably early 2006. And at this time, we were in the town center in Southfield.
Okay.
Evergreen and I think it's Evergreen and 10 Mile. and my office was on the 8th floor, and I could look out of my office and see the Renaissance Center. And in my mind, I was what I had envisioned success looks like. And at this time, also, a lot of people were calling with ideas. Can you loan us some money to get this project off the ground, Charles? And so it was just a very interesting time. It was something that I had never experienced before. And I got a call from this lady, and her name was Alice, God rest her soul, sweetest lady in the world. She says, "Hi, Charles." She said, "My name is Alice, and I've heard about you. I heard you're doing some good things over there, and I want to sit down and meet with you. And I'm not bad to look at." That's how she said it, right? And so I'm thinking in my mind, okay, here's someone else with an angle. Here's someone else with, asking me for something to invest in something. So, but I was intrigued. I said, "Come on in," and so she came in, and I shared a little bit about what I was doing with assignments, because we're still doing assignments too.
Gotcha.
And she says, okay. She said, "I'm doing the same thing, but with $1 million properties and up." And I said, "Okay." And she showed me this. Back then, we had the HUD settlement statement. She showed me a HUD settlement statement, and she showed me how they got paid. And she said, "Now, I've been working with a real estate agent, and he's just dropping the ball. He doesn't return phone calls promptly. He's just dropping the ball. He's not professional, and so I'm looking for someone else to step in. Would you be willing to?" And Phil, I'm sitting there looking at this money, and I'm thinking to myself, there's no way in the world you just want me to fill in and you're going to give me all this money.
Too good to be true.
It's too good to be true. And so I said, okay. And I was very, very suspicious, very skeptical, but I'm going to be cautiously optimistic, right? And we had this one deal. We got to the table, and it closed. And she says, "Okay, I'm going to call you in a few days to come get your check." I'm like, "Whatever, okay." Right? We'll see.
Here it starts.
And, yep. And in about 3 days, she called me, and she says, "Okay, Charles, come get your check." And I'm like, "Okay." So I went over there because I had to get it from our house. So I'm like, "Okay, here's the plot twist, right?"
Right.
No plot twist. I went there, got the check, and I'm like, man, and it was written on her business account. And I'm like, okay. So I left, and I deposited the check, but I was scared, right? So I'm like, okay, but don't touch the check. Just see if it clears first. And a couple of days later, it cleared. And I'm like, okay. I mean, we're talking $53,000.
Wow.
So the check cleared, and I'm like, okay, but don't spend it. Don't spend it, man. You just don't know. Don't spend it. And so I must have waited for about 3 weeks. And I remember I had a house over on Sylvan Lake, and I remember leaving the house and going to the gas station on Orchard Lake in Middlebelt. That gas station is still there. And I went to that gas station, and I had a debit card. And I said, okay, I'm going to try. And I remember putting the debit card in, and then, you got that little time where it's like waiting, it's authorizing, please hold. And I'm like waiting, and I'm seeing, and it said, approved, pick your selection of gas and start pumping. And I'm like, okay. So, man, Phil, I put $10 in there. I put $10 of gas in there, and then I rode off, and I checked the balance, and the balance was there, and it was minus $10. And I'm like, huh. I'm like, well, okay. So, and after that, I want to say probably every 2 or 3 weeks, she would call me with another deal. She liked how that one went. She liked how I did business. And man, we rolled like that for, I want to say probably, man, all the way till the market crashed.
Okay.
Yeah, all the way to the market crashed. And so I pretty much stopped doing mortgages because why, right? And I just did these deals, man. And so my biggest deal is a $4.5 million property, and we did a slew of $1 million properties, $2 million. and then my lowest deal was a $670,000 house at the time, and so it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
So this is happening like through 2008 and all that.
Yeah, this is all leading up to the crash.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, all leading up to the crash, and you know, through that, when I was doing mortgages, what a lot of people don't get about the crash, talking to people, I was doing loans still at the time. And so back then there were banks, subprime lenders, First Franklin, New Century, Countrywide, and we'd have files that, you know, that we could not process because either they didn't have the right income or they didn't have the right credit score or they couldn't verify their, you know, their residency, where they were staying. Something was going on. So we had these files usually set aside to follow up on in 3 to 6 months, right? And man, they would send their reps in to our office like, hey, how you guys doing? We have a new program. Like, do you have any borrowers where you can't verify their income? We're like, well, yeah. Do you have any borrowers where you can't verify their employment? Well, like, yeah. Well, we have programs for that. We can take care. I'm like, well, shoot. Well, here you go. I got a whole stack. Here you go. And that's pretty much how it started from the loan officer perspective. These banks came in, and so that whole thing kind of, you know, precipitated this crash. And then you had, of course, appraisals where, you know, it was wild west with the appraisals. And so when the market crashed, it hit everybody. Like, I was in the middle of buying a property in Bellagio and Novi, and then in Stonegate, and literally the market crashed right up from under me. And it was a blessing in disguise. I didn't see it as a blessing at the time, and, you know, usually I don't. You know, at the time it's going down. It's like the worst thing that could happen. You know, God, why are you doing this to me? But in hindsight, I could see that it was a blessing in disguise. The market crashed, and I had a choice. Like, everything had dried up, and so I was very irresponsible with the money that I made in terms of saving and preparing. I took care of my kids. I did a lot of good things. I gave people money. I was the guy that I am, you know. But at the same time, I had never seen that kind of money before, and I was very irresponsible with it. And so when the market crashed, you know, there's a saying that, you know, it's in the good times when bad habits are sown. You know, so it was in those quote unquote good times that a lot of the bad habits that I had around, you know, how to manage large amounts of money, a lot of those bad habits were sown during that time. And so when the market crashed, it hit me really, really hard. Like, you know, I looked up and it was like, man, my bank account, like, what in the hell happened, you know? And I would always live for the next check. But what if that next check isn't coming, you know? And so, next check wasn't coming. And so it was a really, 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 really scary time. You know, I was back at an apartment at this time, and I got evicted. You know, I eventually got evicted, man, and I ended up finding another place to stay, but I had some decisions to make. My broker was now the one with Lee and Delbert. They had went out of business, so I was no longer in the big, nice suite in the town center. That was gone, and I had hung my license with another guy who just so happened to be a broker, and at this time, I actually knew more than him. So, like, by this time, man, I had like, leading into this thing, man, I had I bought a 2-family flat, so I was kind of familiar with the whole rental thing and being a landlord. You know, I had done assignments. I was a licensed notary, so I was working at a title company part-time. Like, I had just about every angle of residential real estate, like, on lock. And so when I hung my license with him and started giving him my split, I knew that it was just a matter of time, because he would call me with questions like, Charles, how should we structure this? And Charles, how should we do this? And I knew it was just a matter of time before I got my broker's license. And so that was in 2008. I want to say the beginning of 2008. and I didn't get my broker's license till 2009.
Okay, so things are still going on, like you got your license.
Yeah, so during the time I had the real estate license before I got my broker's license, it wasn't a lot, like everything had dried up. So part of the fear that I had with getting my broker's license is that there's a portion of time that you can't sell as a salesperson. So when you get ready to make that leap, there's a window of time that you don't have a license. And at the time, child support was like really, really knocking on my door. And so, and I was closing one deal a month, just one deal a month. And that deal was enough to pay my broker, and enough for me to pay my child support. And that was pretty much it, man. I actually went to work part-time delivering pizzas at Domino's. And I would go to the one, they had a Domino's over on Franklin and Northwestern Highway. And people would laugh at me, but I was like, well, wait a minute, let me explain the logic here, right? So I would work part-time from like 6 to 9, 2 days a week. I would eat for free because it was, like the area was like Franklin, dude. So it's like we got great tips. Okay. So so I would eat pizza for free, and I would leave there with the tip money in my pocket, cash money, plus I got an hourly wage. So it was like, dude, this is like no brainer. Like I've got to do this. So you do what you have to do to make it through the tough times, man. And so although I was this realtor who just few years prior was looking at buying a $1.4 million house and flying all over the country just to go shopping and stuff like that, I had been humbled to delivering pizzas at Domino's, man, and putting this sign on top of my Nissan Maxima that I had bought, and delivering pizzas, man. So you do what you got to do, and then I was so afraid to go get my broker's license and try to get my broker's license. Part of it is that I hadn't been in school in like forever. The other part of that is knowing that at some point, in order for me to really dedicate myself to passing the exam, I would also be faced with this period of time where I couldn't sell. How was my child support going to get paid? The judge had already told me if you miss one payment, you go into jail for 30 days.
Really?
So it's like, well, shoot, there's no way in the world I'm going to risk that. And I allowed fear to keep me right where I was. And it got so bad that at one point I remember sending out, I said, you know what, I got to get a regular job. And I remember logging into Monster Jobs, and I had to dig up my resume because I hadn't even seen my resume. I found one on an old floppy disk that I tried to like rig and update, right? And I sent that resume in, and I also sent one out to McDonald's. And when I got no response, when I didn't get a response from McDonald's didn't even call me back. I was like, man, this is ridiculous. Because you start to feel humiliated. Like you start to feel like, there's this feeling that you are now being your value is now being judged as a person, and I mean just everything. It was just a really just a humbling experience and hopeless experience. And through all of this, I continued to do my spiritual maintenance, which is largely prayer and meditation based, and I just stayed the course. And then I heard one lady, she said. In a talk, she said, do what you love and the money will come. And for some reason, on this particular day, I remembered that quote. And I decided that, you know what, I am not going to get out of real estate, because by this time I got bit by the bug of real estate, not the money, but being able to help people. So that bug got me, and loving what you do, loving seeing somebody at this, like going to a new chapter in their life, and you're a part of that, like, and they thank you and they're grateful, like that part got me. And so it's like, no, I'm gonna do real estate, and I'm gonna go get my broker's license. And therein lied a very important lesson for me about commitment. And when I'm on the fence, then commitment won't come. But once I make a decision that this is what I'm going to do, like I am going to do this no matter what. Like if I got to deal with the judge, fine, but I am doing this. No matter what, I'm going to do this. Commitment came right behind it. And it was almost like when that switch was flipped, everything opened up for me. So out of nowhere, man, like this dude showed up. And this is a guy that we had done business. Like we had tried to find him a house like a year or two before, and we never found him a house. He showed up out of nowhere and was like, "Hey, are you still doing real estate?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm doing real estate. What's going on?" He said, "Well, I'm pre-approved for, $700,000 and I'm looking for a house." Man, it must have been the easiest sale in the universe. That was the $670,000 house that I sold.
Okay.
And I was able to pay all my bills up in advance, including the child support. And I went to real estate school to get my broker's license. And I was so excited, man. I failed the test the first time, and I allowed myself to cry and everything. That whole day, I gave it to myself. I was the last one out of the testing center. I walked out, and it started raining. I didn't put nothing over my head. I just slow walked to the car in the rain, crying. And got to the car, allowed myself to cry that whole day. Gave myself that space, and that was tough because, people that you were in class with, they call you like, "Hey, how'd you do? How'd you do? How'd you do?" And I didn't answer the phone. I dodged them. And but the next day, crying, I'm all done crying. Let's get back in here and take this test again. And I studied, took the test, and passed it. So that was in September 2009.
Okay. Congrats on passing.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thank you.
Did you have to wait like a bit to like take the test again, or?
Well, in Michigan, I think at the time you had to wait 10 days.
Okay.
Yeah, so I didn't have to wait too long. Thank God, because if I would have waited, I may have forgotten some stuff, But yeah, no, it was 10 days. I jumped back in, took the exam, and passed it, man. So yeah, and that was really exciting.
So was that then? Pass the test, you get the license. Mm-hmm. Is that the beginning of like 4 houses, or did you call yourself something else?
Yeah. So so what I ended up doing is I told the broker that I was working for. I said, "Listen, man, I passed my broker's test. You're gonna have to let me go." Then he had to sign off, and I had to chase him down to sign off because he was taking his time signing me off. And then he finally signed it and told me congratulations. And so, man, it was such an exciting time, Phil, because I get to create, like what I want to create. And at this time, of course, every company was coming after me, Keller Williams and like Coldwell Banker, come work with us. We got this, we got that. And I'm like, I want to do this on my own, And so I looked up names of companies and like Googled like what's a good real estate company name, and like everything sounded so just bland, like meat with no seasoning. It's just like every 5-star real estate company, the best real estate company, just stuff that just didn't resonate with who I was, right? And so at the time, 5 hamburgers had just hit Michigan, right? And everybody was talking about 5 hamburgers, five guys hamburgers, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, man, and the ironic thing is that I don't eat beef or pork, and so they don't sell chicken sandwiches, right? They don't sell turkey burgers. It's just straight up, like stuff that I don't eat. So I'm like, man, so maybe I can come up with a company name called Five Houses, right? 5 real estate, 5-star real estate, something like that. And so I said, nah, that just didn't sound right. There was something off about it. And then the image of the number 4 popped in my head. And it just organically popped up. And I looked at the 4, and the 4 kind of resembled the roof of a house. And I said, huh. And so I said, well, let me get online and see what's available. And I came up with 4 Houses Realty. And so that was exciting. I was like, I got a name. And I ran it by a couple of my friends, and they're like, yeah, man, that's like nothing anybody else. I said, yeah, I know, right? And the number 4 is actually, any numerical number is going to show up first in the alphabetical search, right? So I had that going for me. And then I get to choose the brand colors. So like, what colors do you want, right? So man, it was just so exciting. And I remember sitting in my condo because I didn't have an office, so I'm sitting in one of the bedrooms in the condo, like creating this, right? This like we're sitting here talking about. I mean, I was excited to get a tax ID number. Like, I wish I didn't have one now, but I was excited to have one, and because it legitimized me, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, man, what colors do I want the brand colors to be? And it's like, well, I started doing some research, and I wanted something that kind of resonated with who I am. Like, I care about physical fitness. I care about what I eat. I care about the environment. I'm, to the best of my ability, I'm socially conscious. And so, the thing that popped in my mind is, well, Charles, where do you spend most of your time at? What draws you to the place that you spend most of your time at? And dude, I spent most of my time at Starbucks. I'd go to Starbucks, I'd read, have a cup of coffee, have some tea, and I'd just read, and I'd meet people at Starbucks. And so I kind of started looking at their brand colors and how they, and what resonated with their logo. And that kind of gave me some insight as to the brand colors of Four Houses Realty. So that's pretty much, So I started in my condo, in one of the bedrooms in my condo, and it just took off from there.
Cool. And then, how long would you say it kind of took to like take off? Like, when were you able to get like your own like standalone office for it?
Well, that was a process, and again, I think that luck has favored me because I've been prepared. Like, I've done some legwork. To the best of my ability, I've kept my motives pure. In real estate, there is a lot of opportunities to commit fraud. And it's little things that as realtors we could get away with that our client would have no idea. Like there's so many different ways our client would have no idea. And, but I have always been committed to living a life that's spiritually based, that's based in integrity. And so I was just staying the course, man, staying the course. And then I'm still working in my condo. I ended up hiring someone, and it was really weird because I had to have them come to my condo.
Okay.
And so, so I'm like, well, I got a 2-bedroom condo. And so they were going to be in one office. Well, where's your office going to be, Charles? Well, it's like, okay, well, your bedroom is over here. You're going to have to move your bedroom downstairs to the basement and have your office in the master bedroom. So I did that, and I had the first girl came in. She started working with me, and then it was some drama with her boyfriend, thinking that me and her were. I'm like, dude, really? Like, here, let me show you a picture of the women that I mess with, right? Like, so it's like, nah, dude, I don't want your woman. But it was just too much drama, and then I would sit there, and I started listening to how she was spending the time. And I'm thinking to myself, I could do that myself. Why am I paying you to do it? This is not and back then short sales were like really a thing. And so I ended up firing her, which was the first time I've ever had to fire somebody. It was the first person I hired. It was the first person I fired. And it was so sad. She was a single mom working, but I had to let her go. And I brought in Julie Haller, who is now our associate broker, and she handles all of our office management. I brought her in, and she would always, Charles, I really love this job. I really love this job. When are we going to get an office? When are we going to get an office, right? So, but it was cool, because we were doing short sales. Julie was spending the time handling that, and we would have our closings at a title company. If we needed to meet with clients, we'd meet them either if it's a buyer client, we'd meet them at the house that we're showing them. If it's a seller client, then we would go to their house if we're going to be listing it. And anything else, we just meet at Starbucks. Again, Starbucks has kind of always been in there. So, and then one day, we had the Woodward Dream Cruise going on, and I was with a friend of mine named Chris, and we were just kind of hanging out. And we went to Be Well, which is on Old Woodward, and this guy comes in. Now, he comes in, and this is an old guy, right? And I'm like, I I know you. I know you. And he just stopped. He's like a cartoonish kind of like very charismatic, very smart, but just very animated and very, he just stops like this. and I'm like, Facebook. And he's like, oh, you know my wife, Sarah. Now, I'm like, yes, that's it. Now, Sarah, very beautiful woman. I would see her on Facebook putting these posts out. She's spiritual minded, so she put these things out. I never got into a conversation or anything about that. I would just like a post here, like a post there. But one day I saw her with this guy, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. That must be her dad, right? That's pretty cool that they're taking pictures and posting on Facebook. That's pretty awesome. I got a daughter, so right. Maybe we need to do that. And then one day I saw them kissing, and I was like, nah, me and my daughter ain't gonna be doing that. I saw them kissing, and I'm like, well, what the heck? What is this, right? So that's where I recognized him from, and that was his wife. And so he's like, what do you do? And he said, man, I really like you, man. You recognized me. Of all the people, you recognized me. He said, man, I really like you. He says, so what do you do? I told him I do real estate. He said, oh, where's your office? And I said, well, right now I'm working out of my condo. He said, you should have an office. He said, I can already feel it. You're the kind of guy, you need to have an office. And I said, yeah, well, I thought about it, but, like, where's the return of investment, right? Like, I get an office, okay, how am I going to recoup that money? Where's the return at? Like, how do you measure that? And he said, no, he said, you need office. He said, I tell you what. He said, the Swanson building over on Long Lake and Woodward? I'm like, I can't say that I do. He said, but it's right on the corner of Long Lake and Woodward. He said, we have the entire floor, the lower level. He said, you need to come by and take a look at an office space. And I said, okay, well, I might take you up on that. Now, mind you, this guy is brilliant. He's a chess grandmaster. Really? And he has his doctorate in Shakespearean philosophy. He owned his own marketing company. I don't know if this might be before your time. DOC, Sexy Specs, the glasses. There's a whole brand called Sexy Specs. Sam Bernstein, it's got the family that's in law. He did a lot of their marketing. Okay. And so the guy is like brilliant. He's fast on his feet. You can tell he's straight up brilliant. And so I said, well, maybe I'll come check it out. And I went there and I looked at it. It had a nice window, nice location, and he made me a sweet deal. He said, Charles, because you're my friend and I'm the landlord. And so I said, well, I'm going to think about it. But really, I had already made my mind up. Like, it's time to get an office. And so that was my first office, man. It was so cool. It was like, again, that feeling of accomplishment, that feeling that, of legitimacy. Like, I had arrived. There's still work to do, but success is now starting to show. So it was pretty cool. That was my first office.
And then what time period was this?
This was in, I want to say 2000 and maybe 2013, 2012, 2013. Okay. But I wanted to share this with you real quick because this is kind of like what drives me to do what I do. And I had shared this with some board members. I sit on the North Oakland County Board Association of Realtors. I sit on their Education and Tech Committee. And we had a panel last year, and I shared this with the group, that out of all the deals that I've closed and since I got licensed, the most impactful deal was when I sold this guy a $3,000 house. And for a number of reasons, it was impactful. Because when the crash happened, we had started, I was by myself now. I got my broker's license, and we were doing short sales. We were partnered up with Southwest Solutions, and we had a sweet deal that we were doing with people that were losing their house. And so the money was good, and I remember I had a Nissan Maxima, and I bought my first Mercedes. And it was the wintertime, and I had this Mercedes S550. And it was like, yes, all I got to do is keep working hard, and I can just keep climbing, just keep working hard, keep climbing. And I remember getting a phone call at the office, and it was this guy, young guy. He's like, "Hey, I'm looking for a house." I said, "Okay, well, tell me what you're looking for." He says, "Well, I'm looking for something. I got $3,000, and I'm looking for a house." How much? He said, "I got $3,000. I said, "Okay." I said, "I'll tell you what. Let me send you some houses to look at. Tell me what you like, and I'll arrange for us to see them." He said, "Well, I don't have an email." I said, "Okay. Well, I tell you what. Why don't let me just get on the computer here, and I'll look up some houses, and I'll give you some addresses." He said, "I don't have a car." I said, "Uh-oh." Now, footnote: the black Nissan had went down, and this dude was on the far east side of Detroit. I got a brand new white Mercedes S550. This sounds like a setup, right? And he's like, "Yeah, I was hoping you can come get me, and we can go look at some houses, $3,000 houses." And I'm like, in my head, Phil, I'm like, no, like there's no way, like, dude, this is a setup. I mean, everybody knows this is a setup. Like anybody can see this is a setup. And I swear to God that if God had a voice, I would have heard him say, "Oh yes, you are going. You are going with your brand new car." And it was wintertime. It was snow, slushy, all that stuff. He said, "No, you're going with your pretty new car. You're gonna go get this dude." And I hung up. And at that moment, it's like everything that I had said, like the reasons why I said I did real estate, because I want to be of service, I want to help people, all of that talk that I did, now it's time to really to back it up.
Right.
So got in my car, went to go pick up this dude, man. I mean, my head was on a swivel. Like I pulled up at this house, man. It's like every other house on this block was abandoned. I pull up to this house, and it's a corner house, and I'm like, man, this is sketch. So I'm like, hit the horn, and he came out, got in the car, and I remember telling him to kick his shoes off because, a young dude, he like 21 years old, and we started riding around looking at houses, man, and he has 6 kids. And I said, man, what? I said, why do you want, what's driving you to get a house now? And he said, well, I want all my kids under one roof. And I'm like, okay. So we didn't find a house then. The next day, or 2 days later, we went and we looked at some more houses. I went back, picked him up, this time from the corner party store, which again, sketch, and picked him up, and I was asking him, like, where do you get your money at, man? And he said, man, I shoot craps in the living room, and I win it from my family. Like he beat his family, playing craps, and he saved up $3,000, and so we ended up riding by this house, and Phil, I'm telling you, from the curb, you could see straight through the house. You could see straight through to the other block. And he said, that's it. That's the one I want. And I said, okay. I said, all right. I said, so, he didn't have a checking account, of course. So the EMD the earnest money deposit was a money order. And the house was being sold. It was a HUD house. And back then, Trot and Trot was over on Northwestern Highway. And, so no bank account. He ended up getting all these money orders, and we ended up showing up for closing. And we closed, man. And as we're closing, this 21-year-old dude, man, he just breaks. I mean, we walked out of the closing room, and we're in like the lobby area, and he just breaks down and starts crying. And I'm like, whoa, like what's going on here, man? I'm like, man, dude, you all right, man? He was like, man, I can't believe I got my own house. I got my own house. And in that moment, man, he touched my spirit. You know what I mean? And it was just one of those things where okay, this is why I do what I do. Yeah. This is why I do what I do, man. So at the end of the day, man, when it's all said and done, man, that has got to always be the focus of this company, man. It's about service, and it's about helping people. And I think as a result of that focus, man, I think that, we've been blessed immeasurably. And I think we'll continue to be blessed as long as we remember that.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's definitely a great story. Do you still keep in contact with the?
So about a year later, I gave him a call. No, actually, it's probably about a year later. I gave him a call, and I said, "Hey, man, what's going on?" I said, "I'm just calling to check to see how the house is coming, man." He said, "Oh, man, I got everybody in the house." He said, "Me and my dad fixed the house, and we got." We got everybody in it now, man. So I think the last time it's been some years since we communicated, but yeah, he fixed that house up, man, and got all his kids, man. His plan was to have all his kids under one roof, man, and he did it. Yeah.
He stuck to it, so it wasn't a sketch at all. He kept his word.
He kept his word, man. He kept his word, and taught me a very valuable lesson too. You know, you never judge a book by its cover, man. You know, you stay open, and as long as service is the primary goal, everything will fall into place naturally as it's meant to. You know, but you know, everything's got to be right, man. And since then, man, every year, Four Houses Realty has had growth. You know, last year, as you know, the interest rate hikes kind of like took everybody by storm, and we had our first quarter where we didn't sell anything. And I mean, you know, we have now 11 agents. In fact, one agent had left. He left to go work with another brokerage, and I just got a text message from him this morning. I got it on my phone right now saying, can he come back? You know, he thought it was going to be one thing over there. It's not. And, you know, and can we come back? So he'll be coming back to be our 12th agent. And but at the time, 11 agents, man, we went through a whole quarter, man, and we had stuff pending, but we didn't have a closed deal. All the buyers were on the fence, and but fortunately, man, we had enough set aside where we're still in business, you know what I mean? So,
Right.
yeah, so it's been a good ride, man. I think it's you know, I've got a good group of people, man. Brianna, who you know, is solid, right? So, but everybody is the same way, man. There's no one that works for us that I have to look at that, because as a broker, you know, if they screw up, I'm on the hook.
Right.
And so we had one guy years ago who was kind of shady, and it's just like, you know, I can't renew our contract. Like, this is it. Like, I just can't, you know, because, you know, what you see as you just going out here making stuff happen is putting my brokerage, my name on the line and at risk of some harm. So, but everybody we got, man, are good people, man, good people. And so that's cool. It's cool to see the growth. It's cool when during the pandemic we ended up finding our office over here in Birmingham, you know. So that was a huge thing, man, because, you know, it was like, man, the market is crazy. It's COVID, you know, it's like 2020, man. It's like everybody's sick and everybody's like, well, opportunity. And so where you had everybody not going to offices, landlords were putting people out, you know, and you can't pay the rent, got to go. And so we went, you know, I went like looking around, and I found this spot in Birmingham, and had Julie come take a look at it, and it was nothing but dirt. Like it's the second floor, but it was like, you know, I don't know what they did, but it was a disaster. And we had a chance to kind of design it how we wanted it designed, and yeah, and we're still here, man.
No, that's exciting.
Yeah.
So about to be, like you said, he's coming back, so you're about to be at 12. Like, kind of how have you gone about, like, growing the roster? Like, are you kind of organically, like, everything's just happening as it happens?
Yeah, like the one thing, and I was asking you about social media and YouTube and stuff like that, because you know, I want to get more into that space. But up to this point, I've done no marketing around recruitment at all, like nothing. So everything has kind of been like, I call it the principle of attraction rather than promotion.
Okay.
So I haven't, because there are some ethical concerns that I have with how some of these brokerages go after agents. Now, there's nothing in our Realtor Code of Ethics that specifically speaks to it. And I think that because there isn't, that agents use that as like a loophole to do things that are, you know, in my mind, unethical. Give you an example. So we have, let's just say, if there is a listing and I want to market in that subdivision, I can market to the whole subdivision. But even if it's listed by another company like Keller Williams, for example, but I cannot single out that particular house. And in other words, I can't interfere with that relationship. Okay, it would be an ethical violation of our Realtor Code of Ethics, and it actually could be fined and lose my license for it.
Okay.
And so, but I could do a blanket market to the whole thing. But the idea is, if there is a relationship there, do not infringe or even meddle with that relationship. So I look at that in every situation. You know, it makes sense to me from just a human being perspective, right? So what that doesn't cover is the relationship that I have between me and my agents, because the relationship I have between me and my agents is tied together by what's called a independent contractor agreement. So it's still a relationship, though. So that's the loophole, right? So, you know, people say, well, you know, we can go after them. You know, it's fair game. And I always come back to the analogy, because this is what they'll do. They'll call the office. Like, they'll literally call the office, ask to speak to one of our agents, and then ask our agent, are they interested in coming to another company? Mm-hmm. You know, like, you know what I mean? It's just, it's slimy, right?
Right.
So I was having a conversation with another broker, and I said, you know, I don't care how you sugarcoat it, you know, with the independent contractor thing, and it's just the cost of doing business. It's still a relationship. It would be the same thing that if I went to your wife and I started trying to convince your wife to leave you.
Right.
You know, like, you know, you wouldn't like that, would you? It's like, oh, you know, well, it's the same thing, right? It's a relationship, and that relationship now, and so that's the strategy that I've had in terms of recruitment, and that's the attitude that I have. And it's all about, I think that if you're good, and you're doing good in the world, and you're doing good in the business industry, then you will naturally attract those that want to be in that space, those that want to be, you know, work with your company. And so that's what we've done. You know, we've just tried our best to be good realtors, good stewards, a good company. And everyone that we've gotten up to this point has been about attraction rather than promotion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of looking ahead then, what's the next year like? What's kind of like the goal for 2023, you know, going into 2024?
Well, I just got, as I was telling you earlier, I just got licensed in California. So I'll be spreading the wings a little bit, you know, going out to Southern Cal.
What made you decide to do that?
Well, it's a couple of things. Mainly, my girlfriend's out there. So she was here, and then we were together, and then her company, well, she literally got a job offer in Orange County, and it would be one thing if it was just a fly by night kind of a dating thing, like we dated and it's like, oh, you moving? Okay, well, see you later. It's been good knowing you. You know, good luck out there, right? But no, she's the truth, man. Like, and so that is the woman that I want to spend my life with. So she moved out there, and so I started pursuing my real estate license in California. And yeah, I started out thinking about being a broker out there, but the school requirement, their education requirement is a whole lot more strict than it is here in Michigan. And so I just didn't have the bandwidth to hire in to just get my broker's license. Although legally I could, I just didn't have the time for studying and still working, because I'm a working broker here, you know. Right. So I went ahead and got my salesperson's license, went to school, and it's been a lot of scope creep. I mean, like I started out with this is the scope. This deadline is gonna be here, but that deadline has moved back because it just did. I had to extend my class a couple of times, and just not enough time, you know. And so finally got through it. Took the test one time and passed. So coming up in 2023. Is expanding the brand out to Orange County, California. So we'll, you know, now serving Southern Cal. You know, I can't wait to like put that on something, right? Four Houses Realty now serving Southern Cal, and so yeah, it's really exciting. You know, it's the price point of houses is a lot different. The demographic is a lot different. You know, Orange County is the only conservative county in California.
Okay.
And so it's not like working here, where we're, primarily as a state, we're Democratic. So I'm moving into an area that, a lot of fear comes up, social issues, I can't pretend like that's not on my mind, But the cool thing is that the people that I've met there in the neighborhood we're at, all of them have been really cool. All of them have been really cool, really nice, and so I'm looking forward to the challenge, man. Looking forward to the challenge.
Do you see yourself getting the office out there as well?
Yeah, definitely. I'll keep the office here. Like I said, the office here runs itself. It doesn't. I need it more than it needs me.
Okay.
So it runs itself. It's self-sustaining. Ultimately, I'll be able to step away and get my broker's license out there and open up my own company out there and pretty much duplicate what's there. So moving forward, I will be working with another brokerage out there, we're going to see what it's like to work under somebody again. I get it is what it is, man. I got to learn the lay of the land and learn how to put deals together out there, because they don't close like we close here. It's a non-judicial state. Well, the Southern Cal is, and so there's no, when you close in a trust. It's not like our closing. So you close in a trust, and primarily so they can get the house back faster if you missed in payments. So it'll be a learning experience, and I'm excited. I'm really excited, man. And so 2023 is going to be very interesting. But hey, you can't grow if you don't stretch beyond your comfort zone. And I'm telling you, I'm comfortable in a mug here, but this is, still a lot. I still got a legacy to leave for my kids, so it's still a lot to do. I'm going to Airbnb my condo here, turn that to an Airbnb. And so when I come back to Michigan, I'll have a place to stay, and my condo can be, make some money. And I get to spend time with my brand spanking new grandson that was born last month. So it'll be an opportunity to do that, be an opportunity to see the team, and and it's going to be an exciting time.
Oh, that's great. I'm excited for you. I'm excited to see it all happen. So where can the people watching, listening, where can they find you at? Are you on?
Yeah, so I am. You can always, our website is, fourhousesrealty.com. So obviously we have that presence, but you can always find me on Instagram. You can just type in Charles Laird and Four Houses Realty, Charles Laird Real Estate. They can find me there. They can find me on Facebook the same way. Also, cell phone number is 248-431-0544. You can always call or text. I do this full time, so I was up at, 12:30, 1 o'clock last night talking to somebody. So that's probably the best ways to get a hold of me.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for coming on.
It's my pleasure, man.
I hope to have you on again in the future, especially when you're in SoCal doing your thing.
Yeah.
I definitely want to hear about the success for that.
Oh, yeah. Me too. Me too.
So, like, I don't have an intro. I don't have an outro, so that's it.
All right.